Tuesday, December the 30th, and we are about to complete year one of conversations on the Sportsline Podcast. I'm Bubba O'Neil. You know, I really got to say this, folks. I truly appreciate the wealth of positive feedback and even the negative feedback, because when you offer it to us, it makes the show better in the end. Today, we close out 2024 with a new friend of CHCH. Well, this Humber College product is a fine example of someone who started at the bottom and through some smooth moves has found himself at the top. Although his on-air position would tell you otherwise, this host and producer possesses the lost skill of not just talking, but listening. Ask the likes of Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Orr, Dr. Maya Angelou, Russell Peters, Geddy Lee, Chuck D, Lionel Richie, and even Peter Mansbridge. Following years at City TV, CBC Sportsnet, and now Apple Music hits, George Stroumboulopoulos has entertained, informed, and injected his own knowledgeable opinions when it comes to music, sports, and, yeah, folks, even life. As a fellow Gen Xer, it's a treat to have him right here in Hamilton, and even better to have him on my version of the red couch.
But no,
you had one for many years.
It's super weird to be sitting on these, by the way, but I like it.
I tell you.
I like it.
Hey, George, first of all, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. It's really lovely to be here with you. Thank you for this. Also, not just interview Russell Peters, but as a teenager, used to sneak Russell Peters into the movie theater that I was an usher at when we were both teenagers. Or he would have been like 19 at the time. I was like 16 or 17. But yeah, so I've known Russell a long, long time.
I tell you, like, both of you guys have done so well.
Long before these careers were on our he was a DJ and I think a fighter, a boxer, and I had no future. I was a movie theater usher, and I thought maybe I would, I don't know, didn't know what I was going to do. Maybe become an assistant manager at a movie theater in Rexdale. Okay. But that's how I met Russell, because a woman I was dating was good friends with him in high school. So that's how I knew him. Yeah.
Well, did your movie theater serve real butter or golden topping?
No, of course. The 80s. Yeah, of course it was real butter. Back then, no, listen, we were super chemical in a lot of other ways, but yeah. You know, the sauce, and it was all pretty bad. But it was, I'm a popcorn thing. Like, that's my vibe, right?
Me too.
How people feel about their children is how I feel about popcorn. I take it very seriously.
Again, we're connecting on so many things here. Hey, you know, you have come to join us on Countdown to 2025, show, to bring in the new year. This is the third year that we've done this on CHCH. And, you know, of course, the obvious question I would ask you was, why would you come here to CHCH and do that? But I will stop you right there for a second here, because everyone's asking me this question is, why would Strombo come to CHCH to pull this off? And I would say, well, Hamilton's a pretty cool town. Hamilton's got real good music over the years, and the music vibe is really continuing to grow. And CHCH is an independent broadcaster. Would all of those three things fit your bill?
Those are huge reasons why I would do it. I've spent my life either in the public eye or long before, even as a teenager, sharing music with people, making mixtapes. The idea of gathering around a room and just playing great records, to me, is a dream. So the opportunity to come here on an independent broadcaster with three bands that I love and give Canadians an option to just come together on New Year's Eve. It's no small thing that it's Death from Above, 1979, Bedouin Soundclash, and Bachelor Balat, right? You're not going to find those three bands coming together on a lot of other places. So this is going to be a lot of fun, man. Why wouldn't I do that?
Well, and I think that's what's so cool about it, is that you identify with a lot of these indie bands, and you have seemed to, throughout your entire career, been a source of promotion, knowledge, and education for a lot of people that are not just, I mean, there's mainstreams out there and they don't need your help, but you like to raise the platform of these bands.
I think there is nothing more magical than an artist who you've never met, who wrote a song about a person who no one ever talked about in a country that might not exist anymore, something that couldn't be further from you, suddenly perfectly scores your night tonight. That's magic, man. The power of a song is so important to me, and the way I feel when someone introduces me to a great band. Of course, I mean, listen, I'd love to support Canadian artists. I love to support any artists on the come up, for sure. But just sharing great songs, like, to me, all these artists who are on the come up, they're not really on the come up because that song's amazing. So that song, it's just, I'm more trying to connect them to somebody who could really benefit from this. So it's not just about supporting the artist, but it's about giving anybody listening to us or watching us this really great thing to listen to on the train home, or if you're driving somewhere in this country and the roads aren't plowed because there's no winter service, and you're just driving, and which, by the way, is a huge part of this country, right? Yeah. And so you just they're feeling frustrated and like, man, I got a lot of rage towards the system. Well, if I got a song for you, you may not know this band, but if I got a song for every nuance of rage and joy you feel. There's a song in my head to share, so of course I want to share this stuff.
That's fantastic.
And New Year's Eve is fun, dude. It's fun. Who can afford to go out and get a drink?
Who wants to?
$25 forget it. Stay home with us. Stay home with us.
That's fantastic, George. And I think of Hamilton, and you think of bands like Teenage Head, obviously going way back. It has been a place. Obviously, Arkells are the sort of staple right now that everyone wants to talk about. But you could go real far back in terms of music history in Hamilton.
My mother used to be a waitress in a bar, and she said every time Teenage Head played, I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, and she would talk about this. Whenever Teenage Head played, first of all, what a name for a band, right? But it's insane. But that the fans would tear the bar apart. And I think she was telling me that to say don't ever behave like that, but when I heard it, I went, that sounds fun, right? So yeah, Hamilton is a huge part. The whole region is such a huge part of the music scene. And even when I was hosting the punk show in Loud on Much Music, so many of the great punk bands were either from Hamilton or St. Catharines or from Burlington, or from, like the whole area had just such great bands. I played a ton of them on the show because this community matters, obviously, and the music's dynamite. Still is.
I listened to you and watched your podcast with Louis on the Newsmakers, which I thought was fabulous. And you said something that made me feel real good.
What's that?
And it's the truth. I think we come from the best in our era, the best music of all time. Yeah. And other people are going to get upset that I said that.
Well, okay, yes, we did. Motown, 60s soul is maybe the great genre, right? The mid to late 60s rock and roll hippie stuff, there's some great psychedelic in there. Of course, that wave in the 50s, can you imagine the explosion when you were hearing Chuck Berry and Little Richard and you were hearing all this, for sure. But what we had was all of it. We had not just rock and roll and those classic rock who would become, they weren't called classic rock then. We had the mythology of the guys and the girls who had died. We had punk. We had the new wave of British heavy metal, which led to thrash, which is of course Metallica and Slayer and Venom and all that stuff. And then Anthrax. We had metal. We had new wave. We had rap and hip hop. And we had dance music. We had rave culture was beginning.
House music.
We had house music. We had Steve Winwood. We had Phil Collins. Yep. There's a meme flown around online right now that talked about all the things that Gen Xers were listening to, and then somehow Phil Collins was in everybody's head. Right? We had the beginning of Madonna.
Yes, we did.
We had the Beastie Boys. We had Public Enemy. And we had Guns N' Roses. And by the way, dude, by this point, we're only 17, 18 years old. Then we get what would come out of Seattle. Yep. And then we had Wilco in Chicago. We had Sloan. And then it was the explosion of Canadian music and rock and roll at that time. Your Our Lady Pieces. Of course, we had the Tragically Hip. We had Baby Blue Sound Crew. We had Swole Members. We had Cardinal Official. We had Chaos. Like from when we were 5 to 25, I don't think anybody's had a 20-year run quite like the Gen Xers had. From 5 to 25, and then we get the evolution of electronic music with the Chemical Brothers and 9 Inch Nails, of course, late 80s. Late 90s too. We had all of it. All of it at once. And we had Celine Dion still. I mean, come on now.
It's true. Yeah. And I know anyone that comes over to my place, and yes, I still have my CD rack up there.
I got my records out. Not only my CDs are in a box, but I got my records out.
I got my records out there too, just sitting there. I mean, I don't have anything to play them anymore. I got to go get a turntable, honestly. But
it is true. Get 1200s. 12s are still the classic.
It's true.
Just get 12s. Yeah.
And you want to hear those extended remixes. They were just spectacular at the time. And you will see. I mean, we're talking about Gil Scott-Heron. You'll talk about Fleetwood Mac. I mean, Rolling Stones in its prime in the 70s when Mick was like so cool. Yeah. Like it's just an amazing time in music.
And we had the Cult.
Oh my goodness, the Cult.
The Cult were so good.
So huge.
Yeah.
Out of Hamilton too.
Yeah, we have so many great bands. It was this sometimes I don't want to be the guy that thinks that we just had a blip, but sometimes I think we had the last blip, because we had the pre-social media blip, right?
Yep.
We had the pre-social media blip, and it was a little bit different. And I'm so privileged to be able to have worked at Much Music at the time that I did. And working at the Edge and radio before that at the time that I did, when on any given day I'd be at work and Chris Cornell would walk in, or Trent Reznor would walk in, or Chuck D would walk in. I remember the day Amy Mann came in and played the Magnolia soundtrack, and I cried through half the show. It was, and my studio was right beside Massey Hall, and there was I was like 24 years old.
Yeah.
24 years old. Beck and Kula Shaker floating around. It was just so many great bands.
It's really a great time.
And it's the one, every generation says their generation was the best at a thing, but I think it's the one thing that even the younger crew will acknowledge.
I think because they keep coming back to our...
We had Tupac.
The kids keep coming back to our stuff.
We had Wu-Tang.
That's all I'm going to say.
We had Wu-Tang.
The Wu.
Like... We had Wu-Tang Clan. If you Desert Island with one record, take 36 Chambers, and your life's no worse.
No, man.
Your life might even be better.
There's some great tracks on that. And you look at that career of yours, and you mentioned some of the places that you work. And I want to go there too. And, obviously I'm a sports guy, so let's slide it there. When I say the names of, Bob Makowitz Jr. and Jeff Merrick, the Fan 590, like, there's the beginnings for you there. I
was 22 years old. We had an overnight radio show that we convinced the boss to let us do.
Millman?
Nelson Millman was the guy. Bob Makowitz Sr. was there, and Alan Davis.
Okay.
So Alan had left. He ran the National Sports Network. What was happening was at 2 o'clock in the morning, or 1 o'clock in the morning, the Fan would replay the Blue Jays game. And we would replay it on a VHS, because I would be opping the board during the game, the Jays game. This is like the World Series era too, right? And so we record the game on a VHS. I would then take the VHS, rewind it to the beginning of the game, listen to my headphones, and we'd play a station ID, the Fan 590, Blue Jay replay. And I'd press play on a VHS, and we'd play the game. And the game was 3.5 hours, 4 hours pre-rule change. So I would go to Nelson Millman and Bob Makowitz at any moment I could, and say, hey, there's like 20 minutes where we're running a replay here. Can I go on the radio? And so they didn't care. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And they gave us game. Me, Bob, and Jeff. Jeff was a grave digger. Bob was playing in a band called Glue Leg. They both loved sports. And I was hired to handle the promotions where we would hand out tickets for ratings, and parking lots at the Yorkdale Mall in Toronto. And that's where I met Jeff and Bob, because they came on and did that.
Wow.
And we sort of hit it off and thought, why don't we do a radio show together? We actually first thought we were going to make a magazine. And then as we were making the magazine, we thought it'd be a better radio show. And that's how we launched Game. And I think it's, of all the things I've done in my career, all that stuff on that show stays with me today. When I go on the air today, when I'm with you now, the Game is still in my head. That show is still in my head.
That's amazing. I mean, and I think it was so different at that time, because young guys like myself and yourself could get a chance to be on air. That just doesn't happen anymore. Now, we can do it in different ways now with podcasts and stuff like that too, but on terms of network television, it wasn't happening.
No, it wasn't. And radio was, but the key, and you sort of alluded to it right off the top with this independent stuff, was that the Fan was owned by a company that only had the one AM radio station in Toronto. They had one FM, but they weren't in the same building. So we were kind of run like a family business. And we were run a little rogue. And it was the early days of sports, 24-hour sports media. Chicago had one, WFA out of New York, one, Sports Radio 66, right? Yeah, so they had their stuff. But we were really free. We were really free. And our bosses were kind of badass back then, man. Because they let us do our thing. Now they put us on at 2 o'clock in the morning. But very quickly, I was producing Spider Jones's radio show, and I was working in the mornings on Saturdays with Jim Richards, who I still think is the greatest radio guy that's ever come. Yeah, Jim's to me the greatest that's ever come out of.
So smart.
Yeah, so smart. I love him. But Bob McCowan, Shaky Hunt, and Stormin Norman, who's a legend, right? So we
young Shulman.
Dude, Shulman was so young. He hadn't quite got the primetime show yet. He wasn't doing primetime sports. It was just an amazing array of talent. But it wasn't just that there was talent there. It's that they let us do our thing. They let people develop. That's what you don't have many opportunities. Now you can do it on social media and YouTube, but what you don't have on YouTube are parameters, really. And trying to find your voice and push your boundaries on a real radio station you could get in trouble, and you did. And that was really, so you never really want to get in trouble because you get fired, no one's going to hire you again.
Done.
Right? So I think having those kind of fences to kind of keep you in a little were really important for the development for me and Bob and Jeff, because we were, how high can we climb this fence without falling over the other side, right? And that was always the part of our mindset. So you push boundaries, but you had boundaries, and it really helped train us.
Well, you got trained in there, and then you've moved off into the music scene in Toronto. You're in Toronto. You're really, on the bottom level of stuff, and much music is growing. And I think this is what's great. I mean, when I think of much music, I think of the fact that of all the music stations that were out there, I always remember Thriller. The world premiere of Thriller was on Much Music. Everyone was on, like, I remember the countdown to it, 7 o'clock at night. Happening. Thriller. Like, it was just so big at the time. Anyway, the music.
Remember he had to put that disclaimer because I think he had connections to the Jehovah's Witness and they were mad at him.
Yes, that's right.
Video, so they had to have the disclaimer so it wouldn't offend religious people. The crazy time we lived in. Gee, like nothing's different.
No, really, eh?
Like nobody's offended now.
So you doing your music thing there, and we've advanced a couple of years, in fact, many years, and you've really developed yourself as a guy that is talking to people, that is informing people, that you spoke to some of the giants, even some of the small people in the entertainment industry, through your years at CBC and even a little stint at CNN. Yeah. But then you come back, and this is where you and I kind of share a boss. Yeah. Scott Moore was one of my bosses.
Oh, he was nice.
He was my boss for many, many years. I spent 11 years at Sportsnet. Yeah. And was the first person to go from The Row. Yeah. If you remember The Row. Oh yeah. To get an on-air gig. Yeah. Right. So I have an affinity for that place. Yeah. And I will never forget the day. First of all, one of the things he used to always say is, one day we're going to be number one. One day Sportsnet is going to be number one. Now TSN had about 15 years ahead of us. Yeah. It just couldn't happen. Yeah. We didn't have the properties. We had the regional program for hockey, for NHL, and the key was the national thing.
But Sportsnet had a really good hockey package with Darren and Kipper.
That's right.
So Darren and Kipper, you could see that Sportsnet was on the come up because it was just my great criticism of sports media in Canada for the most part, which is why it didn't work at Hockey Night in Canada, which is why it worked when I was on Game, is I just find it boring and behind the times mostly. Sportsnet started to push it a little back then. Kipper and McLean were pushing it. And I think everybody, you walk into this building at CH and you walk by that big collage of all the shows that have been on here, but we were still living in the Don Cherry hockey world, right? And Grapes had set the bar for provocative sports commentary in Canada. TSN didn't go there.
No, they didn't.
Except for Landsberg on Off the Record, who I think he's a legend and super underrated. Super underrated. But Kipper and Darren on Sportsnet started to push it, and McLean started to push a little bit, and you got a sense that even though Sportsnet didn't have the big properties, something was coming. You could feel something was coming.
Well, one day, I think I was here full time. Yes, I was here full time now. And I get this announcement that Strombo is joining Sportsnet and is going to be the host of Hockey Night in Canada. Yeah. Obviously one of the biggest establishments when it comes to sports in this country. First of all, why did you do it? And were you scared to do it?
Wasn't scared at all. Why did I do it? Because I wanted to do it. It's Hockey Night in Canada. Got to do it. In this country, if you're in the media and you are pushing, like how much can you do? What is the game here? After you have your own late night talk show, but I also hosted the new music on Much Music and Live in Toronto on The Edge and Game. So I'd hosted all the shows that somebody in my line of work could ever have dreamed to host. In fact, to me, my dream gig was the new music. So having the opportunity to host the new music, because that's the show where I learned about The Clash, and The Clash changed my whole life. Watching a new music interview on City TV when I didn't have cable, so it was like City TV when it was on. Remember, it was on Channel 79, and we used to have these. My mom found a TV in the garage, and we had a hanger in the broken antenna, and we'd have to move it around to get 79. But I watched the new music, and I watched The Clash. So to host the new music to me was my dream job. But if you're going to do what I do for a living and on TV, and you're doing it, there's only two shows that I looked at that went, those are the shows that I haven't done that I would do, that I like. The National or Hockey Night in Canada. There's only two that are after you have your own late night talk show that you can really do. And I wasn't on the path to get me to the National anymore. I could have. I had a News World show. I could have gone down that road. Not to say that I would get it. That's a very prestigious gig. By no means do I think I could have got that. But that's the path. The other one was Hockey Night in Canada. Also, I knew that it could work and be awesome and huge, but it was more likely not going to work because I was going to face so much opposition internally more than externally. And I thought, those are all the reasons I should do it, because I won't be governed by fear ever in my life. But never mind TV. Dude, it's TV. It's media. Like, real life is, I grew up in a family where people had to work hard for a living. Getting hired and fired on a show that's no skin off my back, right? Like, I grew up in a family where people went to work. So this was a real privilege and a luxury to have this kind of career, and I know that. So I'm never going to be afraid to take that gig, not even close, even though I knew it wasn't going to work.
You knew it wasn't going to work.
Well, I knew that it could work, but I knew that they didn't have the stomach.
Right.
I knew that they didn't have the stomach to do what needed to be done to make it work. I knew that, but I just thought, come on, man, roll the dice. How could you not? How could you not take that gig?
But the whole idea, at least for me, and again, I'm on the outside now. I'm no longer at the network. But I thought, again, that there was, and I'll say it, and I have the highest respect for the people that are there. I thought the show had gone stale. I thought the show went stale. And adding you into it, this sort of new look, new voice, just someone different.
Yeah,
but I thought that's the reason why this is going to work.
Well, the only reason it should have worked in this sense is that a new voice for the sake of a new voice isn't the only move. What you need to do, I believe, and there's a reason why when I consume most sports media now, and I still follow hockey and motorcycle racing very closely, curling as well. Shout out Devin. I love Devin Harrow's coverage of curling. I love curling. But I get it from podcasts. I get it from non-traditional sources now, mostly because to do it right, you just don't need a new voice. You need a new approach. So what happened was the guy who hired me to do it, Keith Pelly, he left shortly thereafter.
That's right.
And I'm like, well, this isn't going to work. I'm with a bunch of guys who don't want me here. But that's okay. They put me in a situation, and had we done things just a little bit differently, I think not only would it work, but it would have set up where we could be in the podcast game. Look at what Spit and Checklist is doing.
Oh.
Come on. That could have been. But
Yes.
That's not what they wanted to do. And I learned at a certain point that it's like, oh, we're not doing the thing you asked. They hired me to do a thing and then said, don't do that thing. But it's me, so I'm not going to change to a fault, which has been good and bad in my career. Been both. I've made dumb choices by not wanting to change, but I've made good choices by not wanting to change as well. So they told me to change, and I was like, no, that's not why I got brought here. I'm not changing.
How could they have not known that?
I don't know. I don't know, man.
Well, like
I don't know.
That's what blows me away, right? Like,
yeah.
I used to see these criticisms of people, of you, like they saying, "Oh, look at the suits that he wears." Dude, you're wearing the coolest suits I could think.
First of all, Deborah Berman, who got those suits for me, and Garrison Bespoke was the suit company. They made the most badass suits in the world, and those suits. By the way, there are guys on Hockey Night now wearing those colors. They're not wearing them as slender as I used to wear them, but
they're wearing those colors.
They're wearing those colors now. Listen, people don't like change. There are a bunch of people who, when I was the host, this is what they told me. The guys who ended up firing me told me that the ratings went up when I was the host with people under 30 and with women. So I was growing the audience. That was the plan. So it was working. But everybody just picks a certain thing, and they don't like your suits, and they're too skinny, and blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. I don't mind that. That's chirping. I'm cool with chirping culture. I can handle that. But I just knew that the guys at Sportsnet, not the people who made the show. There are amazing producers on that show. I'm talking about, I knew the uppers.
Right.
This didn't have the desire to move it into the next era, really. At least that's the impression I got from some of the stuff I heard behind the scenes. And that's okay. Can I tell you a story about when they offered me the job?
Go wild.
I don't know if I've said this. Should I say this? I'll say it. When I got called and offered the job, here's what I said to them. Let me do, for the first year, just give me the late game. Give me and Merrick the late game is what I said.
Yes.
Let Ron and Don do keep the 7 o'clock the way it is. Give me the late game with them. Let me show you what we can do. Let us go. And like, no, do it all. I'm like, trust me, guys, give me the late game. And then you just do it as is. And maybe in a year or 2 years, it'll evolve. And they said, no, do it all. And I was like, that ain't going to work. When I left and they put a new guy in the host, what did he do? The late game? And they had, and I love David Amber, by the way.
Sure.
Love David Amber.
Solid broadcaster.
Late game.
Yep.
Right? And Rondon had the 7 o'clock game. So they ended up going there. But my plan for Merrick and I we were going to really revolutionize in a good way what hockey coverage could be, I thought. I'm not saying what they did before was bad. I thought it was good. We were just going to be part of an evolution and a revolution of it. But someone's going to give me a hard time for saying that out loud, but I said it anyway. Because that's actually the conversation I had.
It's true. I see it in other sports, George.
That's the conversation I had with them.
I see it in other sports in the way it's broadcasted. Dude, and everyone's changing.
I remember saying to them, it's like, guys, the model exists, which is inside the NBA, which is the greatest. I don't think it's just the greatest sports show.
So good.
I think Inside the NBA is the greatest studio show ever made. That's the greatest studio show ever made. The model exists. Hockey culture is not like that. I went, you don't think so? Look at Chicklets. It is like that because people are like that. People want to have fun. But I would do an interview. I would get stuff out of the interview. The team would call because I got too much stuff, and they'd pull the interview down.
Wow.
So they hired me to ask questions. I would get the stuff, and then an interview. So I just knew that it was going to be. I just like this. They don't want the thing. And it's important for me to say this out loud. I'm not mad at it. It's the game. I'm okay with it. And it was, I think later it was said by somebody at Sportsnet, I was the right idea at the wrong time. I don't think so. I think it was the right time, but I understand it. And I'm not mad at it. I'm not bitter. I think it's cool because what it did was it allowed me, once I got the hockey gig, I knew it was going to go the way it went. So I started House of Strombo, the music stuff in my house, knowing that this was going to be the future. I just knew it. So when that ended, I went to Apple. Like I knew it was going to come. Like I'm dumb about a lot of things, man, but I'm pretty good at strategy. But I'm dumb about a lot of things.
Good career planning. Well done. I think it's fabulous. And I'm going to say this, and not because you're sitting, 2 feet away from me. I thought you were fabulous. I loved what you did. I love that I think in this country, and this is just for a lot of things, especially on television, we're stale, we're dry. It takes the Americans for us to change, and that drives me crazy. And I thought when you were there, I thought this was something new. This was going to inject some new looks. And yeah, you tried some different things with the sets, but that stuff sometimes it's going to hit and miss.
Yeah,
right?
And that doesn't matter. And that's
right? It's about the people.
Even something, this is so inside, but the real sports fans listening will know this. Even when they put all that money into the set and they wanted to make a video about the set, I said to one of the guys, like the bosses, don't do this. Don't make a video bragging about the set. I had to host it. Like, don't do it. It's not what people want. This is not how you reach people. You're this big company who people are mad at because of their phone bills, and now we're going to talk about how much money you spend on the set. Like, don't do it. That's not how we do this here. Yeah. But because I had worked at CBC before that, and I know CBC gets a lot of criticism, but CBC's done so much great stuff, and I believe that CBC, by broadcasting coast to coast to coast in a lot of languages for a lot of people, had to, or multiple languages, they had a different understanding of the country and who listens to it and who watches it. So I have a very different approach to what they were trying to do. It would have worked, but I want to be super clear. The people who made Hockey Night in Canada were awesome. The producers, the tech, like one of my favorite parts was that the Harbinder Singh, who used to run the jib camera on Hockey Night in Canada, was the director of the talk show. And so it was a lot of them were my crew that I worked with, and so lucky to work with at CBC before. So the crew who made the show, the producers, Brian Spear, who ran it, so smart, understood it. They were great, but it's just. You know what it's like, it's TV, man. So my job sometimes is to be an agent of chaos or change, depending on your perspective. And I thought I was going to be an agent of change. Turns out it was too chaotic for them. But that's okay. I don't mind it at all.
One last question on the Sportsnet gig, and I first of all, I really appreciate. I don't know if you've talked about that stuff too much, but
some of it. But I don't know what I did. Now I'm starting to think.
I appreciate you.
I'm 52. What do I care?
Yeah, no, what are
we going to do?
I don't know. Sometimes people don't want to talk about stuff. That was the past. But I do appreciate that because I think there are a lot of people out there going, "What happened?" So
there's
I really
so much
do
behind the scenes that I one day will talk. I can talk about. And today's not the day, but there's so much stuff that goes behind the scenes. Being part of institutions in Canada is an interesting thing.
Well, next time when you're ready, you can come back and put your book right there, and we can chat about it. When you want to go, we can go deep on.
Dude, I'm
deeper.
I'm taking these secrets to the grave. I'm taking these to the grave. I'm not doing that.
I'm gonna ask you one last question. You can choose. You can say, Bubs, I'm not going there. Bubs, I'm not going there. I can't go there. And it's only because it's a topic that continues to still be talked about. Should Don Cherry still be on Hockey Night in Canada?
I don't think anybody should be on anything. Like, I don't. I think that so I've known Grape since I was about 21 years old. Don used to record Grape Blind, the radio segment, at the radio station that I worked at, The Fan. So I've known Grapes. I knew Rose. I met Rose a few times. Like, when I got booted from Hockey Night, Don was the guy that emailed me to send me a really nice message. Don's combative. He would sometimes come into the studio. He'd have something on his mind. I would have no problem going right up to Don, and we would have our moment together. Don gave me a lot of room and respect. So on a personal level, I have no issues with Don. Like, none at all. In fact, Don was great to work with for me. Great to work with for me. But I think he said things that the management said that's too much. And that's the game we play. You push your back. Like I said, you climb the fence. How far can you climb before you fall or push off? Sometimes people push you off. Sometimes you fall. And so when Don said the thing, again, this is like so old news now for him, but of course I disagreed with it. Mm-hmm. But that show has said a lot of things. I was surprised it was that thing.
For sure. But
it was new management. So the person who was in charge at the time, I knew him a little bit back in the day. He's a good man. Decent man who probably went, I'm not doing this. And I think that's all it was. Just one guy went, I'm not doing this. That's all. But I don't know. I don't know if that's what happened behind the scenes. Right. But should he or not, I don't know. No, I mean, the goalposts move in culture. The goalposts move in culture. And if you cross a line where society says we're not down for it, then we're not down for it.
That's right.
And that's the game. It's this idea like people should be able to say whatever they want. No. Broadcasting isn't free speech. Broadcasting isn't free speech. There are community standards, and the community decides what the standards are, and then the management of the company decides which standards they're willing to push, mm-hmm. which they're not willing to push, and the community decides what's not okay. Don said a lot of things on the air over the years. So something happened where the community was like, no.
Enough.
And that's the game. That's the game we play. Again, I strongly disagree with that stuff. But Don had said things on the air before that I would go into the room and say to him, dude.
Yeah.
But Don, to his credit, and I would never throw Don under the bus, to his credit, Don was always willing to talk about it. Like, he was not, like, he would talk to me, he wasn't combative with me. He would just, this is that. And I said, well, this and that. But there are a lot of people in that environment that sometimes, like, and I don't mean at Hockey Night, I mean in our world, in our media world, yep. you get away with the thing until you don't get away with the thing.
Yeah, and as you said, those goalposts right now are moving more than they ever have.
Yeah, and I don't mind that the goalposts move, because who are we to think that we're walking around like we have all the answers? We don't. Yep. The community decides what the community wants. That's what broadcasting is, right? Now, sometimes there are lots of forces determining what you can and can't say, and there's censorship, and that's wrong, and people speak out on an issue that they think is a human rights issue and they get fired. That's wrong. Those aren't community standards. That's actual, like, really dark stuff happening behind the scenes in the world of media that we know is true. We know is true. But when it comes to sports, I mean, didn't Don say that Rose would always say to him when he would leave the house going to Hockey Night, hey, Don, stick to sports? Mm-hmm. Like, she would tell him. But he just... Again, I didn't agree with a lot of what he said, and I certainly do not share his opinions on a lot of things. But he was always a good, decent man to me, and to a lot of people I know, he was a good, decent person. But they're just reached a point where the community went, no, And it is, bosses don't fire people who make them money, or they rarely do. Rarely do. And Coach's Corner was a very big segment on Hockey Night in Canada. So those decisions aren't taken lightly.
Let's close up with a couple of things. It's coming to the end of the year. I just put together 5 boards here.
Boards, okay.
Let's go to these boards here.
I only really watch hockey and motorcycle racing and curling, but okay.
I know, but I know you're a top athlete, and it doesn't have to be in this country. It could be in the world. Whatever to you. We have our own AP, our CP athletes of the year: Summer McIntosh and Ethan Kasper, obviously male and female. Jay Gilgeous-Alexander was second in MVP voting in the NBA. Shohei Ohtani, Nathan McKinnon wins the Hart Trophy. Rodri wins the Premiership title with Man City, and of course a Euro with Spain. So I think that's a pretty big list.
Okay,
who do you like?
So Summers 4 medals, which you get 3 gold and 1 bronze, right?
3, yes.
3 and 1. Tied Penny.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so that is an amazing accomplishment.
Past Penny, actually.
Past Penny.
Yeah.
And for 1 games? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I think the season Shohei Ohtani had was incredible, but come back to me when he pitches a year. I think what Rodri did was pretty to win those titles. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do. My vote probably. I followed the Shohei one more for obvious reasons because I'm in LA and so a lot of time and so the Dodgers. But I think Summers games were just incredible and brought a lot of joy. So I'm going to go with Summer or Rodri.
Top team. We got the 4x100 relay team, men, people that you've interviewed actually, winning gold medal at the Olympics. The Chiefs went back-to-back Super Bowls.
God, I hate the Chiefs. I hate the Panthers. I hate the Celtics. I hate Man City. I like the Dodgers, but I'm a Blue Jays guy, so I'm going to pick Canada's 4x. Also because we weren't sure that was going to happen, right?
You're right.
Right, the 100-meter dash was a thing, and Andre's run, that last leg, was out of this world.
Unreal.
So I also think that to do a thing, well, only 4 of them, well, 5, you can't alternate, but you to do a thing like that once every 4 years on that stage is very different. Obviously, what the Kansas City Chiefs are doing is this dynasty kind of thing they're doing is really incredible to watch. But I'll never, ever, ever pick the Kansas City Chiefs or Florida Panthers or Boston Celtics or Man City for anything. So to me, it's between the 4x or I'm taking the 4x.
Best event. The Olympics, Paralympics in Paris, I don't know what you thought, I thought they were unbelievable. 7-game series between the Oilers and the Panthers. The Super Bowl went right down to the end, 2-point thing. Euro 2024, Spain, they're magical. The President's Cup comes back to Montreal, the U.S. win again. And of course, the Nathan's hot dog eating contest was not won by the same man for the first time.
Who was that guy, Kobayashi?
No, Joey Chestnut.
Joey Chestnut, he retired?
Joey Chestnut, no, he got kicked out of the tournament because he went to a rival tour.
Is that like the Live Tour golfers?
It was.
My God.
He went somewhere else.
Gluttony's political. Oh my God. Listen, I think that the Cup final only because of the comeback. And Game 7 was a bit of a letdown, of course, but that video we saw after the fact of Connor McDavid being very angry, I liked that a lot. I enjoyed the Olympics. I was the Olympic. You know me, I'm a pretty political guy, so the Olympics. I have problems with the Olympics, but Kansas City Chiefs. No, I can't do that. I was in Europe when Euro happened, and it was pretty great to watch. And seeing Euro 2024. So I think I'm going to go between the Cup final because of just that comeback.
And Alberta went. The country went wild. Actually.
Wild, and also growing up in Toronto and being around the Leafs and I was at the arena that's named after a credit card when it was for Paul Maurice's first game as a coach of the Leafs. When he got the head coaching gig, I was there at the practice facility for his first game, and I watched Paul Maurice run that team hard on the ice. Right, he didn't bag skate him, but he had him moving. And so seeing Paul Maurice win a Stanley Cup, I was really happy. Really, that's a good guy, and watching him win brought me joy.
Paul. Yeah, he lived in Oakville for a little bit, so I used to see him all the time. Top newcomer,
Caitlin Clark, for sure.
It has to be.
Has to be Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark. Well, hold on, but in about 5 years from now, I think the PWHL is going to be. We can look back at this. So the PWHL to me is so interesting and so good, and I love watching the excitement. To me, I don't think we should treat sports like it deserves something, because it's especially pro sports leagues. I don't think it deserves anything. It's a business, right? But when sports can line up with doing something really important and interesting and groundbreaking, I'm here for that. So I think what Caitlin Clark and the PWHL together played a role in doing that. But Caitlin Clark just got so much hate. She's amazing, and what she's done for the game, I understand why.
Yes.
Problematic, but none of it's her fault.
No.
None of it's her fault.
No.
How people talk about her, you can get mad at that. It's fine. You know, I know she's a white woman. I know that plays a role. I know all that. I know it. Same thing with the Beastie Boys and rap and Eminem and rap. I know that. But you can't deny that what Beastie Boys and Eminem did wasn't like super revolutionary and important.
It's huge.
So Caitlin Clark, I love, but so that's my choice for this year. But I really believe the PWHL is going to be the thing that a lot of my friends, you know, like I'm a 52-year-old sports guy, right? I love sports. A lot of my buddies didn't go watch WNBA games, didn't care about the WNBA, partly because they're blind. There's a blind spot for them, partly because they don't want to watch, you know, women's sport, whatever. But I'm watching them change.
It is changing.
Caitlin Clark's part of it, and I'm watching them change about the PWHL. And people are getting, and I think it's because in Toronto specifically, so many people I know who are Leaf fans just hate the Leafs. They hate the team. Yep. They don't like the guys.
No, hate it.
They just don't like the vibe, right? So, and I'm a Habs fan, so nothing brings me more joy than watching Leaf fans eat themselves. It makes me laugh. But I'm watching people really get behind the PWHL in a way. I think some of them have daughters, so they have their connections. But I'm watching it change. I think the PWHL is going to be really, really cool to watch.
Stand with you on that. Last one quickly here, and it's down to about 2. Actually,
what do you mean?
Actually, 3.
No, 3.
The Blue Jays.
That all sucks. Now, listen, the Caitlin Clark thing, I get it, because Team USA had great players.
Yeah.
So you could make the argument that, sure, Caitlin Clark could have been on that team. Rookie doesn't need to make that team. That, to me, is not a big fail. I think it's an oversight, but I'm not part of the selection committee, so I don't really know.
I thought so.
Yeah, I don't follow the game. I don't follow the performances that closely, so I can't speak. The Jake Paul, Mike Tyson thing, now that you see all the times Mike had a chance to knock that kid out and then pulled back, that's not a fail. That feels like a crime against my time. The Blue Jays, the rage I feel, dude, the rage I feel about the Toronto Blue Jays is so real. It is so real to me. So I'm going to say Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, because I felt like that was intentional.
Netflix did pretty well.
Yeah, of course. But of course, rich people always do well. Rich people never lose even when they lose. Yeah. It's like in The Wire when Omar says to Bubba O'Neil, he says, at this range with this caliber, even when I miss, I can't miss.
Yeah.
Even if I miss, I can't miss. That's what it's like for big streaming companies. But the Blue Jays breaks my heart the most. But I think the Jake Paul, Mike Tyson thing is, because it looks like Mike, even with his wonky knees and he almost didn't make it, there were a couple of times he could have popped that kid on the chin and that would have been it.
He's 58 years old there, buddy.
But did you see how much one punch that kid? Yes, but that's. Listen, dude. But the Jays break my heart the most.
Yeah.
For sure.
Atkins, we can go on and on. I'm going to have you back, yeah. But you know what, dude? This has been fabulous. Like, first of all, I can't wait to see you on the stage.
Can't wait to
You're going to do a bang-up job here at CHCH and open the eyes of many here to what we're doing on New Year's Eve. And as I said, promoting these bands, getting them up on stage, rocking out the place on New Year's Eve and bringing in 2025. No one is going to do it better than you are.
Thank you.
And I'll tell you.
I'm going to pale in comparison to my hero, who is Rick Campanelli. He did it last year.
Yeah,
I'm just going to try to honor the champ.
I know you two are tight.
As Master T used to call him, the franchise. Ricky's the franchise. But thank you, my man.
Thank you so much for coming here, talking to me about sports and life and music and everything that I could have ever dreamed to talk to you about. I'll quickly say this one last thing here. Well, you put out, and I follow you on social media, and I love when you're sitting on your piano at the middle of the night, 3 and 4 in the morning, singing your music, and I look and I'm like, oh, 1.4 followers. Holy mackerel! It's what time? Yeah. But you put out a post which I thought was so cool. 2 actually, we'll kind of combine them. You went back to a hospital in Rexdale, but the one that really, really got me was you were walking around in Rexdale Mall talking about a pirate radio place that you and your buddies went to, and that you started back in the day, and talking about dreams and finding yourself and understanding what you want to do, and then making things work for your life.
And then you never know when it's going to be the thing, the work you put in. That's right, in Rexdale, the Albion Mall. So really, that it was nice to go back to that
I
mall.
could see it in your face, man, and you weren't lying, and you were telling the truth. So things like that make it real for me to sit here and having an opportunity to talk to you about this kind of stuff and seeing what kind of guy you are.
Thank you, and I really do appreciate it. But we haven't even talked about the Habs. Like, this is going to air.
They're horrible.
When's this going up? Tonight?
Tonight.
This is going up tonight. Okay. We just went into Florida. We won in Florida for the first time in 8 years, and we just beat Tampa. We're a bad team, but we're not as bad as we used to be. And the best thing about being a Habs fan right now is even when we're bad, we like cheering for these guys. Are you a Sabres fan?
You know that.
You're a
And I
Sabres
know
fan?
you just threw that. That was a grenade. You just threw that out.
Well, because Sabres fans, man, I love Buffalo. I used to go to Buffalo as a kid. My aunt lived in Buffalo. My mother's aunt lived in Buffalo, so I spent a lot of time in Buffalo. I was drinking Genesee beer at 7 in Buffalo. Like, I love Buffalo so much. I think there's great architecture. There's great art. Like, think about like Rick James. Think about Buffalo, man. Like Buffalo is a great city. I want that Sabres team to be better.
The Bills. It's gonna happen.
It might be the Bills, actually. It might be the Bills. Did Josh Allen not even get like a walk-on? He wasn't even like a real. He had no preferred walk-on status, right?
No.
Right.
No one really wanted him.
Yeah. So
We got him.
I haven't cheered for the Bills in my life, but
Likable.
yes, and that matters in this era. It really matters. It could be the Bills, but I want the Sabres to be better. However, as a Habs fan, I would be remiss if I didn't just a little.
They're telling me to wrap up. You know what? I know you're going to be busy. Happy 2025.
Pleasure, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, bud. Hey, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports, especially people that are passionate about all aspects of it. And that was just a great sit down. Hey, if you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, or, just needs a little love, we do want to hear from you. Hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. If you have something to say, really appreciate if you do comment. For the outstanding people that make the Sportsline podcast possible, thank you so very much. Happy New Year.